Hey friends, it's Yulia. Today we're going to do a value study in watercolor. Let's go. For this exercise, I wanted to do a portrait since I've only done realistic or true tone studies in the past. So I combed through the references folder on my phone and chose this particular one. I love the close-up shot, I love that it was already black and white, and that made it a lot easier to see the values as well as the shadows and the highlights. First, I grabbed my materials and then I got to work on a sketch I already started. After I got the initial sketch laid down on paper, I wanted to check the accuracy. One of my favorite ways of doing this is by taking a photo on my phone. It allows me to see the face features and the head shape with fresh eyes and see where I went wrong. I also compare it directly to the reference photo on my phone, like within the album right next to each other, to spot the differences quicker. I went ahead and shaded in the darker areas while sketching. I know this isn't necessary in a watercolor portrait since I will erase most of it anyway, but it helps my brain put the painting together. I also identified the highlights and made sure to leave those blank since the bright white is really tough to get back. For my color, I decided on blue. I don't know why, but just felt like the right tone for this piece. So I mixed my cobalt shade with black, diluted the paint with water, and also mixed the paint with white on my palette to get a wider range of tones. My black and blue paints were from different manufacturers. It must have been different formulations because they separated a little bit on paper when I was doing my darker shading. So my tip for future me is to use paints from the same manufacturer, or at least the same quality level. Because side note, my black paint is from Crayola and is about 15 years old. So I definitely think there's some quality issues there. For the skin, I did the first layer in a wet on wet technique so that my colors would blend together nicely. I didn't cover the whole area with water quite yet since I knew that the left side of the face would have a lot more value differences, so it's been a little longer working on it. So by the time I actually got to the right side of the face, it would already be dry. So I kind of worked in sections when I was doing the skin. After this first layer, I decided to work on my patience and leave this portrait alone to fully dry. I continued adding layers to the skin, hair, and sweater with the bigger brush until I was happy. After another rest period for the piece, it was time to add in details with a smaller brush. I find that paintings really start to come to life at this stage once the smaller brush gets involved. However, the right amount of water is essential to getting the fine details with watercolor. I'm not the biggest fan of how the eyelashes turned out. There was too much water in the brush and the paint ended up looking a little sloppy. I debated coming in with black ink to add a little bit more definition to my lines, but I decided against it since I wanted this to be a watercolor only piece. At this point, I thought I was finished with the piece. I took a photo as I normally do, just to see how it looked, and I thought it was alright, so I thought I was done. I took a night to sleep on it, and I opened the photo again on my phone. After continuing to look at it, I wanted to make a couple more finishing touches. For example, I wanted more contrast on the right side of the face, although it wasn't explicitly shown in the reference photo. So I added some more shadows around the chin, forehead, and cheek area, just to give the portrait a little bit more depth. I also added a white gel pen to the highlights, including the hair. Now, I finally felt like the piece was finished. As a whole, this was not too much different from a normal portrait, but I feel like there was much less decision making involved in choosing the right colors, which was a relief. It allowed me to just kind of paint, knowing that the hues would work together no matter what. I also really like the look of the final product. I think it's interesting. She looks like a winter wraith or a water genasi from D&D. And I think the solidly blue tone just kind of gives it that nice little je ne sais quoi, so to say. I quite enjoyed this little project, and it gave me some good inspiration for painting a little bit more whimsically and not always sticking to a realistic color palette. I think the next step in my learnings would be to do a couple master copies and keep experimenting with my colors, tones, and techniques. As always, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to support me with a like, subscribe, or a comment. Thank you again, and see you next time.